Hey everybody, Lisa here from youraddict.com. I'm coming to you today to talk live about labeling requirements, which I know is super sexy and something that generally people try and avoid for a really long time. I know I've talked to a couple of startup designers in the past month that have either tried to ignore it completely or have kind of figured things out at the last second and had to look into stopping production of their labels so that they could get things changed. So what I want to do today is talk about simplifying the process for you so it doesn't seem as overwhelming. But first, just a little bit about me if you're new and tuning in for the first time. Again, my name's Lisa. I have worked in the fashion industry for the past 15 years, and now I'm taking that experience and sharing it with independent designers and startup clothing brands to make sure that you have all the information that you need to run a profitable business. I've got a blog over at youraddict.com. It's got apparel training, inspiration, and lots of information for the community of people that are starting their own clothing line. I've also got a free Facebook group. You can link to it from this Facebook page. So if you are starting your own clothing line, we'd love to have you over there. It's a great place to ask questions, share resources with other people that are going along on the same journey as you. So today we're going to be diving into labeling requirements, specifically talking about what's required on your labels within your garment within Canada and the US. I'm just gonna pop over here to my notes and make sure that everything is working. Thanks for your patience. Looks like we're working over here. There we go. All right, so what I wanted to do again is really just simplify the process for you guys. So there are a number of different government websites that give you the requirements that you need to find out what you have to have in your labels for them to be something that are that is okay to sell to consumers. And then there's other pieces of information that you have to have on your labels so that you can actually import them into the country. So if you're making something in the US and you want to ship it to Canada, there are other requirements that sit on a totally different government website. So it can be a bit of a tangled web. Today I'm going to be speaking specifically to people that want to sell their product within North America. So Canada, US, I've dug into the full requirements for both of those. And what I want to give you is really the 5 things that you need to include on your label to be able to sell in both of those countries. And then I'm going to give you also a couple of bonus items, things that I would add if I were you that aren't necessarily required. So to keep it super, super simple, in Canada and the US, I'm going to make sure that I'm just looking at my notes so I don't miss anything. The things that are required are number 1, your fiber content. So what are the components of the materials that are making up your garment? So it could be as easy as a t-shirt that is 100% cotton. It would just say that. It could be something that's much more complicated. That's, for instance, an outerwear garment that has a lining, that has fill inside where you would have to call out the down fill or the polyester fill or whatever that fiber content is of the fill of your jacket. You're also going to need to call out different areas within the garment. So if the main body is one fabric with one fiber content that's different than the sleeves, you would need to call that out on your label. For example, the main body is 100% polyester. The sleeves are 50% polyester, 50% acetate. I'm just making that up. What's important about this is within Canada, those fiber contents have to be in both Canadian and in French, since Canada has 2 official languages. And if you're going to be selling your product online, which most of you are going to be doing, it is a requirement that you are having both the French and English translations on there. So bucket, if you're doing a North American product, you are going to want to have your fiber contents in both French and English because it is a Canadian requirement. You're also going to need to have whatever that component is, so whether it's your main body or your sleeve, called out in both French and English translations. So on the Canadian website that calls out all of the labeling requirements, it does have a French and English translation for the standard fibers. So anything you're looking for should generally be on there. So that's not something you actually have to go out and get translated. But if you're looking at something like your sleeve, and I am terrible at French, you would need to talk to somebody about what is the right terminology to be using for your English and French translation. So that's number one thing to include on your label. Just on a side note on that, when I was reading through this on the Government of Canada website, it's on their Competition Bureau website, it isn't super clear on whether or not you need to contain both French and English translation. It says if you're selling to a part of the country that uses both official languages. So it's sorry, that's not clear at all. It said to specify and use the language based on what people predominantly speak as an official language within that area. And so I actually called them up to say, hey, if I'm selling online to all of Canada, but I'm not selling in stores in Quebec, do I actually need to put the French translation on there? And he said, no matter what, if you're selling within Canada, you have to have both. That is not what I understood from reading it on their website. So I would say as a CYA, cover your ass, get it on there in both French and English translations. It's not gonna hurt you. And again, if you're small, they're probably not gonna catch you. If you have stuff that's going out the door right now, you are gonna wanna have that updated for future. But it is definitely something that to be on the safe side, include both the French and English translation of your fiber to be covered within Canada. And it's not going to hurt you for the US to have it, so just get it on there. Number 2 and 3 are really similar. You're going to want to include something in Canada called your CA number, and within the States, it's called your RN number. So what this is you can register with both the Canadian and the US government to say, I am a business and I'm a registered business and this is my address, so that when consumers want to look up who is selling that product, they would be able to easily look at your label and get that information. There are other ways to do it. In Canada, instead of having a CA number, you could put on the official name of your business as well as the address that you operate out of. In the US, it's just putting on the official name of your business. I would say to simplify that and not end up with a tag that's super long with a bunch of personal information. If you're a small business and you're operating out of your home, you probably just want to go ahead and register and get those numbers. And then you can just use them going forward on absolutely everything and not really think about it. Again, if you don't have them, it's not the end of the world. You can put on just your business name and your address for Canada and just your business name for the US. Again, if you're doing all of North America, I would just get the numbers or put on at least your full address so that you're covered within Canada. Number 4 thing to be included on your labels is country of origin. So when you're looking at the Competition Bureau's website in terms of what you need to include within Canada, it actually doesn't call out the country of origin because this is something that's required for duty and customs. So I would just say make it a standard that you're always including your country of origin on your labeling requirements, because then you're covered if you are shipping across the border. And it is something, as a consumer, people really like to know where their product is coming from. A lot of small designers are manufacturing within North America, which I would say is a bonus for you, because to people that are shopping small, they are looking for that. So I would definitely include your country of origin, so where your goods are manufactured, right on your label. If you are looking to get any sort of duty savings by manufacturing within Canada, the US, or Mexico, and then shipping to another country and looking at getting savings under the NAFTA agreement, there is actually a more detailed way that you need to call out your country of origin. And I'm going to put some links on the blog so that you can dive into that a little bit deeper. You need to talk actually not just about your end product, so where it's sewn together, but also one step removed around where your materials are coming from. So if you are making a t-shirt in the US, but your fabric is coming from India, you would need to call that out in order to get those NAFTA duty savings. It's not a labeling requirement per se, but if you want to get those duty savings, there's a little bit more work that you need to do. So that's going to be saved in a link on the blog as well, so you can check that out. So that's number 4 thing. And then the number 5 thing to include on your labels is actually a US requirement, not a Canadian requirement. But again, if we're just going to bucket in everything for North America, you do need to get care instructions onto your label. Since it is just a US requirement, you technically don't need to do a French translation of it. Canada doesn't require that. But to be a good citizen or a good Canadian, you might just want to put it on there. Or you could use something like standard symbols that you don't need to translate, and then you're covered as well. So again, that is a US requirement that you're putting on your care instructions. In Canada, it is not required that you do that, but it is a nice thing to do. And it is going to save you probably a lot of headaches and returns with people not washing your product properly and then saying that it didn't stand up to going in the dryer when maybe it wasn't supposed to. So as a business operating, it's probably something that you really want to do anyway. Even though it's not a legal requirement within Canada to put it on there, it is a legal requirement to put care instructions for the US. So those are the 5 things that legally you must have on your label if you want to sell within North America. Quick recap is your fiber content and placement of where those fibers are within your garment. Your CA number is number 2, which is your Canadian registration number. Your RN number, which is your US registration number. Your country of origin is number 4, and your care instructions is number 5. When I was kind of telling people that this was coming up as something that I was going to be talking about, a couple questions came in that I would love to address as well. One of the questions that came up was around the permanence of your label. I know within the activewear community, I came from Lululemon, and we always used something that we said was like a tear out label. We didn't want a scratchy label on your product, so it was something that was educated that you could easily tear out that label. There was definitely conversation around, is that a permanent label? Within Canada, your label has to be able to withstand 10 washes under normal care. So if you're recommending that it be washed in a washing machine and goes in the dryer, your label has to be able to stay on and stay legible for those 10 washes. So technically, a tear out label that could last for 10 washes is considered permanent and would follow the rules. I would just not necessarily recommend to market that really heavily that you want them to take it out. At the end of the day, it's your customer's prerogative whether or not they want to take it out, and you might put it in such a way that they kind of have to take it out or else your product looks strange. But the requirement from a legal perspective is that it be in there for 10 washes. So as long as it can do that, you should be fine, even if it's something that can be torn out after those 10 washes. Another question that came up was around fonts to be used on labels. So neither the Canadian or the US website say anything about specific fonts to be used, but they are both very, very clear that the labels need to be legible and accessible, which makes sense. They want people to actually be able to read these. So my recommendation for that would be to use a very simple font, something that's like a sans serif font that's really, really easy to read, and just make sure that your text size is big enough so that people can actually read it. There is also stuff linked on the posts that I'm going to be posting up on the website around placement, so where these labels should go within the garment. Canada has some specific requirements about trying to, I think it was actually, the US, around it being in the center back neck. And then of course, some things don't have a center back neck, so what do you do? So you want to try and follow the placement as closely as possible. And if you don't have a center back neck, then maybe you need to put it into the side seam if it's something like a halter top or something like that that doesn't have a back neck. So it's the reason that they're doing that, and the reason that I'm saying it kind of within this legibility piece, is they want your customer to be able to find that label super easily. So where you put it within your product is going to be able to help them find it. So if you have it right in the center back neck, when it's hanging on the hanger, you'll be able to see it super easily. So again, there's no specific font that you need to use, no specific font size that you need to use, but for all of the required information, you want to go as plain text as possible. Definitely don't use any script fonts or anything like that, and make sure that the font size is big enough so that it's easily legible within the garment. The third thing, obviously, that had come up that I've been talking to some people about this week was around the language translations that are specifically required for Canada, because we do have 2 official languages, both English and French. And the only thing that is required to be in the French language is the Fiverr content. So just have that on there, make sure that you're covered, and you should be fine for your language requirements. The last thing I kind of wanted to speak to on this was some things that I would recommend that you include on your labels, even though they're not required. So this is coming from like my experience of both shopping and knowing what customers come back to you with what kind of questions, and managing your actual day-to-day business. What are those things that you want on your labels to make your life easier? So there are another 3 things that I would suggest that you include on there no matter what. And number 1 is your size. So I know that's super obvious, but since it's not one of the required things, I didn't want you to go, these are the 5 things that I need, and go, oh shit, forgot to put my size on there. So just make sure that you're including a size somewhere on your label. It is not required by the government that you do that, but as the practice of doing business and somebody who's selling apparel, you need to have a size on there so that you can track your inventory, make sure that your customer is getting the right product. And number 2 is a unique style name or a style number. So I know when people are starting out, style numbers is kind of outside of what they're thinking in terms of what they need to manage their business. As you grow over time, you are going to want to have unique identifiers, so unique style numbers for every single one of your styles, so that over time you can say, okay, I offered a long sleeve t-shirt with a crew neck, and then the next season I did that long sleeve t-shirt with V-neck. You're going to want each of those styles to have its own like number or something, so that you can easily go back to your documents and your tech packs and communicate with your factory and post online a separate product image that's all tied with one code or one piece of information against it, which is the style number. So if you're just starting out small, that might be your long sleeve crew is one, and your long sleeve V is another. As you get bigger, you might do a different long sleeve V, and now long sleeve V as the unique name doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So definitely building out in the back end some sort of way to create style numbers that are unique that you can get printed on your label is going to help you out from managing your inventory, and also managing your style information, both with your manufacturers and also through your e-commerce selling. And then if you're selling to boutiques, they're going to need that as well. So you want to have that unique identifier at the style level. Number 3 is you're going to also want to have a unique identifier at the color level. So I've definitely seen where, oh, we offered a pink t-shirt, and then the next season we offered another pink t-shirt, but they're different pinks. And from an inventory perspective, that can get really confusing if you don't start to give them what I would prefer is a unique code for every single color that you generate within your assortment. So I would also include that on your label, so that when you're looking back, it's a really easy way for you to be like, hey, was this the light pink or was this the dark pink? And when you don't have the 2 sitting next to each other, it's really hard to know. So pink number 1, 2, 3, 4 versus pink number 1, 2, 3, 5 are 2 totally separate things. It's right there on your label. You can manage your inventory. You can make sure that you have the right quantities updated on your website. You'll know what you have on hand. And you'll also know if a customer is asking for the same product over again, you'll be able to say, hey, take a look in your label, look at that style number, look at that color code, tell me what those are, and I can get you exactly the same thing. So it's really going to help you start to streamline and manage your business if you have those additional pieces of information on there. Your size, which is super obvious, your unique style number, and your unique color code. So those are the 3 things that I would add on top of the required things. That's like the super simple dumb version of labeling for North American clothing. I did write up a really comprehensive post that I'm gonna put the link to up on the blog that has all of the links to the Canada and US labeling requirements. I've also included on there links to a couple of labeling suppliers. So Avery Dennison is one of the hugest that supplies all sorts of labels. I'm sure you've gone to even Staples or something like that and seen that they do stickers to put onto binders and file folders, but they also do custom labels for apparel. So I'm going to link to that on the blog, and I'm also including in there somebody that's smaller that a lot of people work with in Vancouver, Advantage Labels. So if you want to check them out and have more of a person than a corporation to talk to, they're a great one. There are a lot of other places. There are Etsy shops that do labels. There are small people like Mabel's Labels that do it. There are a ton of different places that you can get these. So I'll have a couple of those links up on the blog. And then I'm also going to include just like a little cheat sheet of these are the things to include for North American products. So if you want to download that, put it at your desk so that every time you're doing labels, you're like, check, 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 check. I got all the things that I need. It'll be a really easy resource for you, and I will upload that to the resource library. If you guys have any other questions or any other things that you're seeing is really helpful on your labels, I'd love to hear about it. Either drop me a comment below or drop me a comment over on the blog. I'll drop the link to the blog post in here so that you can get all of those links on there. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. Really appreciate it. And thanks for your questions ahead of time so that I can make sure to cover all the right content for you. Talk to you guys again next week. Thanks. Bye.